6,000 feet in the air and your engine stops. You can't make the runway. You've got two people on board whose lives are now in your hands. What do you do? Let's find out in the hangar. Welcome to In the Hangar. I'm Dan Milliken.
And I'm Greta Torvart.
Well, Greta, 6,000 feet in the air, what do you think?
I don't know. I've never been in a situation exactly like that before, but it doesn't sound like fun to me.
Well, Dan Blumel, you've been in that situation. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what in the world happened?
Well, yeah, my name is Dan Blumel, and when I was just turning 21, my birthday was about a week prior, I had some friends that had summer jobs. We went to the University of Utah together. They had summer jobs in Alaska to work at one of those fish processing plants. When they bring the fish in, they prepare them to be frozen or whatever, and they needed to get to Alaska. They had plane tickets from Seattle to Alaska, but they needed a way to get to Seattle. And I volunteered, being a new pilot, about a year as a pilot with about 95 hours I had at the time.
Wow, 95 hours.
Yeah, so I was a pretty young pilot, but I was trying to build hours because I imagined I might be an airline pilot someday. And so if anybody was willing to contribute, you know, half or 2/3 or whatever the cost, I was sure gonna take advantage of that and take them. Anyway, so I took off from Ogden, which is where I was based. I belonged to a flying club that had 3 airplanes, 2 172s and a Cessna 182. And I was in the Cessna 182. And I flew from Ogden to Salt Lake because I wanted to make sure I got all the gas possible because I had to make that short flight. When I got there, I asked them to top off the airplane. My first mistake was that when I said top it off, I didn't go and look at what they thought topping off was. I don't know how much they topped it off, but I should have inspected that myself to see if I could fit more in there, because I wanted to make sure I had all the fuel I could hold, because making it to Yakima was gonna at best leave me with the 30 minutes that's required legally as a reserve. And so anyway, we did that. We took off, and as it turns out, near the Idaho border with Utah, there was some weather, nothing terrible, but still I ended up having to go around some of it and climb over some of it. And so I ended up burning more fuel than I had anticipated, but I didn't bother to consider the impact on me making it to my final planned destination, which I should have made some additional calculations and attempted to land somewhere short of Yakima, Washington. Well, anyway, we got within about 15 miles, I'd say, of Yakima. Cessnas are known for having inaccurate fuel, at least back in those days, inaccurate fuel gauges. But they were confirming to me that, we should be okay, because when we landed, I had what looked like about a fifth of a tank on each side.
Okay.
But like I said, I had always been taught never to count on those, but again, that was giving me feedback that gave me a little bit of comfort level I shouldn't have had, obviously. And we ended up, the engine quit. I was up at something like 6,000 feet, I would say. It might have been a little bit higher than that, because up in that part of the country, the altitudes of the airports aren't that high. So the engine suddenly stopped, and I lowered the nose, and the engine kicked back on again, because we were running on both tanks at that point, so I knew what the problem was.
Oh, you knew?
At that point, I knew.
Okay.
Well, how could you really know for sure? But I was darn confident that the problem was fuel starvation, especially when the engine kicked right back on as soon as I lowered the nose. But then I told the guys in the back, they were both in the back, and I don't remember why one of them didn't want to sit in the front. Maybe they felt it was safer in the back. I don't remember. But the funny part was, at that point, they said, "What's going on?" And I said, "Looks like we're going to be making an emergency landing." And at that point, I didn't know this at the time, they had a bottle of Jack Daniels in their bag, and they started sucking on that. And it was probably 5 minutes or more before we landed, but they started sucking on this bottle of Jack Daniels.
That's good emergency rations. It's an emergency.
I suppose.
I guess they're not flying.
Yeah, right. I didn't share it, that's for sure. But anyway, the next thing we had to encounter as we were descending, because I had to make the decision, where are we going to land? Farmers' fields, you never know until you get so close you can't change your mind anymore.
Right.
And I decided that the 2-lane state highway, one in each direction, not 2 in each direction, was going to be my best bet. I didn't see a bunch of traffic on it. As it turned out later, I was told by the local people after we landed that actually it was a very busy road most of the time, and usually with semis on it. So fortunately didn't encounter any of those. But anyway, the next thing was high tension power lines. I flew hang gliders for years before this, and you only get one chance to make a landing with a hang
Okay,
glider.
so you'd had that experience
That's
driving
helpful.
everything.
Oh, I believe that that's the reason I didn't panic or handle it all, because that was normal in a hang glider that you've got to get it right the first time.
You were used to not having an engine.
Yeah, exactly.
And somebody in the back drinking Jack Daniels while you're hang gliding.
Yeah, right.
All right, so high tension power line.
Yeah, and so I said to myself, do I want to try to go over these? And I said to myself, no, because maybe I'll make it, and maybe I won't, because I might stall trying to go over the top of the power lines. So I dove under the power lines,
Okay.
and then the road had a joggle in it, and I ended up landing between the two joggles, and then I had to go around the curve in the second joggle in the road, and the only damage to the airplane was two things relatively minor. The plastic wingtip on a Cessna 182 hit one of those road signs off on the side that says how many miles to such and such a town. And then as I went around the curve, the little those little vertical reflectors that they have on the edges of the road
Right.
creased the bottom of the horizontal stabilizer. And that was the only damage to the airplane.
Well, at least you didn't hit a sign that said low-flying aircraft.
Yeah, right. Anyway, we came to a stop, and maybe you have a question along the way, but we came to a stop at an intersection.
Okay.
And as it turns out, right at that intersection on the corner was a helicopter repair shop.
Oh, you're kidding.
No. And as it turns out, that's where we put the airplane overnight.
Okay.
In the we just pulled it in there, dragged it in there with a tow bar. I don't remember anymore. Oh, but I forgot to tell you something else that was quite something. When I got out of the airplane, I collapsed to the ground, probably from the adrenaline overload or whatever. And I probably sat on the ground. In my mind, it was probably 10 minutes, but in reality, it was probably 2 or 3 minutes, because I was just stressed out.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I bet the adrenaline starts to come out and everything else.
I didn't kiss the ground or anything like that, but I definitely collapsed. Anyway, so the plane got parked there at the airport, and the police came shortly thereafter. And funny, they asked for my driver's license. I didn't laugh at them and say, "What do you mean driver's license?" But it was ironic that they asked me for my driver's license.
Well, you were driving on the road.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, in a lot of Western states, it's not illegal to land. I don't mean emergency land. It's not illegal to land on a road as long as you avoid the traffic and you get off the road when you're done. There are people in Utah and Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, they land on the road and go to the gas station and gas up.
Well, I know
at
they do that in Alaska.
I've seen that.
Oh, they do it here in the West too, in
Okay.
Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, all of those places. I have friends that land on roads and get to the local gas station there to fill up.
Or like the Roy's Diner or the photo shoot that everybody does. That
Yeah,
too,
right.
I think.
So anyway, as it turns out after that, the gentleman who ran the helicopter repair shop said, "You just help us out in our shop. I'll loan you my truck to go over to Arlington," which was just north of Seattle, where there's an airplane junkyard, because he called to verify whether they had a horizontal stabilizer. "You work for me when you're not busy, and you can stay at my house, and I'll feed you. I'll do all of this stuff for you," because I'm just 21 years old. I didn't
Right.
have a lot of money or anything. "And you just help me out in the shop when you're not doing anything, and I'll loan you the truck, and you can go
Wow.
over Arlington," which was probably, I'm going to guess and say, probably a 2-hour drive each way
Wow.
to go get a horizontal stabilizer.
That was a different day and age, maybe.
Well, it
I
was.
don't know.
It was
Maybe
like-
they do that today,
It was
too.
79-ish.
Yeah,
Well,
1979.
pilots are a lot different than the average citizen.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's
the
true.
Community.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then, and his crew of guys were all A&P mechanics, and so they ended up, after I brought the plane, I have to back up a second. The next day, the TV crew came and interviewed me, as well as the newspaper people did, and there was a front page article in the Yakima newspaper from that. And then also the police blocked off the road because there was a grass strip about a mile farther west from where I came down. There's no way I could have made it there. I didn't even know it was there.
Oh, wow.
But there was no way I could have made it that far. And we taxied down to there, and that's where they made the repairs down there at that grass strip. And then it was maybe 3 or 4 days later, after the repairs total from when I landed till I left, that I flew back to Utah alone. Now, one more thing, my friends.
Yeah, I was about to say, did you talk about your friends and what they did?
Well, the policeman that came, actually, no, a policeman came the first time, but then it was the next day when they blocked the road. He took them to Yakima, and they caught a bus from there to Seattle, and they didn't miss their flight from Seattle to Alaska.
And they were happy with the Jack Daniels. They just had to get a new one.
Well, I don't think they finished it.
Not in that 5 minutes.
And the cop didn't ask them, about their
No.
breath or anything like that.
That's good.
So,
Okay, so then you get it to the grass strip, you do all the repairs there, then what happened?
well, once the repairs were done, I flew it back home.
So you took off from that grass strip.
Yeah.
Did you put gas in it?
Oh, of course. But also, I should mention, too, the FAA did call me, I believe it was either the first night or the second night, and they asked me all about what had happened. Plus, also, when I was going down, I called on the radio to the people in I'm forgetting the town.
The nearest town, yeah.
No, the town in Washington, Yakima.
Okay.
The tower in Yakima. So the FAA already had known about this incident. And after interviewing me, they said, we're going to call it an incident, not an accident, because of the amount of damage, minimal damage to the airplane, and no one was injured, blah, blah, blah. They said it would be just an incident, not an accident. And when I got back home, the insurance of the flying club that I belonged to, I had to pay $500 the deductible for the accident. And that was, well, for me, that was quite a bit of money, but when you look at the big picture, that's nothing.
No. What are your biggest takeaways from this whole experience? You're a 95-hour pilot, so you're pretty much brand spanking new, 21 years old. What did you take away from this incident that made you a better pilot?
Don't run out of gas. I never came close after that. You can imagine that was the wake-up call.
You always visually verify, and yeah.
It's a high-wing airplane, too, so it's easy to be lazy. And you tell the guys to top it off, do you really want to climb back up there and look again? It'd be much easier if it was a low. Not to say that crossed my mind, but still, it's a lot easier if it's a low-wing airplane to see what they've done. Because really what I would have done is I should have told it not only top it off, but please squeeze every ounce of gas in there you can, because I'm going to be pushing it.
Long way to go. Yeah.
All right, you mentioned you were wanting to head to the airlines. What happened?
Well, you can see I wear glasses, and my vision back then was probably 20/60, I think, and correctable to 20/20. But back in those days, they didn't take you if you weren't basically 20/20 in both eyes with no glasses. So that was pretty much the end of any dream I had for that. Plus, I'd heard rumors from some people that said, you become an airline pilot, and it kind of ruins it for doing it for fun. So half the airline pilots, they only fly for work. It's just a job. They don't do any flying. And then other airline pilots, they do both. But I was a little bit concerned about that, too, if it would ruin it for me for doing it for enjoyment.
Through the years, has the vision requirements changed at all?
I don't know the details, but yes.
Yes, I actually know. My dad was trying to become an airline pilot as well, and I think he ran into the same problem probably about the same time frame, too, for having to have
Now, some people
correction.
back then would do radial keratotomy for vision correction, but then I heard some horror stories called the Sands of Sahara, where your eyes would always be sandy all the time.
It's early on in the surgeries.
I wasn't willing
now.
to take that gamble.
Yeah, understandable.
So I guess at least, modern medicine with eye surgeries and everything else have kind of changed that whole landscape.
Well, I'm sure that has too, but still, you can wear glasses and be an airline pilot now. You
Yeah.
don't have to be 20/20 uncorrected.
Yeah.
So, Dan, you run Z Vision?
Yeah, we started that company quite a few years ago, and we make landing and taxi lights for aircraft.
I know I've got a couple on my 210, Lola, and the first time I had them on, I landed at my airport and somebody calls out, this is daytime, and they're like, wow, those lights are bright.
Well, are they the LED or I'm sorry,
Xenons?
No, the
HID?
HID. No, they're the LED.
So you've got the newer ones that we've been making just the last couple of years.
Yeah, so they're LED, and what's amazing is I put them up against the main competitor, because I have those now on my wing, and so I put the main competitor right under my prop where my landing lights are, and the difference, you can see how much brighter. How are your lights, how are you able to get them brighter?
Well, there's a couple of things. The LEDs that we use are the most powerful LEDs available on the market. They're not moderate power LEDs, they're considered high-powered LEDs. The problem and the reason why most aren't using those is because people think that LEDs don't generate heat. But when you're dealing with landing lights, they absolutely do generate quite a bit of heat, but not like an incandescent bulb used to generate heat, but still they do generate quite a bit of heat. And they can't use the high-powered LEDs because they've got no way to dissipate the heat. The heat sinks on the back are too small, and unless they have a cold air blowing across them, which they typically don't in an engine cowling, or if it's in the wing, it's just stagnant air, they can't dissipate the heat enough to do that, so they have to use moderate powered LEDs. And then the other thing that we also do is we have active cooling. Our heat sink is probably three times the size of theirs, plus we have active cooling, a waterproof fan that flows air through that keeps that heat under control.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We can run at full power continuously, and we never dim.
Well, thanks for coming on, sharing your story from way back when, and that's just amazing, being able to calmly, I guess the hang gliding now makes sense that you're able to calmly do that. And I want to thank our other sponsors out there as well, like Flying Eyes, where you can go to flyingeyesoptics.com, use our discount code, taking off all caps one word, for 10% off. We love our Flying Eyes. Also, 67 designs, the best camera tablet mounts out there for your plane, your boat, your car. 67D.com, Marshall Protective Service, MPSProtects.com, and Clemens Insurance, ClemensInsurance.net. Thank you guys. We'll see you next time.
On In the Hangar.